that make humans suffer: anger, hate, sadness, envy, and betrayal. When the fear is too great, the reasoning mind begins to fail, and we call this mental illness. Psychotic behavior occurs when the mind is so frightened and the wounds so painful that it seems better to break contact with the outside world. If we can see our state of mind as a disease, we find there is a cure. We don't have to suffer any longer. First, we need the truth to open the
Hagakure is a classic on samurai ethics, emphasizing honor, duty, and loyalty. Understand the meaning of Bushido. I have discovered that Bushido, the way of the warrior, lies in dying. When faced with the two options of life and death, one should choose death without hesitation. This is not difficult. One just needs to pursue this goal with firm determination. Some claim that death is meaningless if one has not fulfilled their destiny. This is a calculating way of thinking that stems from the vain, urbanized version of Bushido. When squeezed between two alternatives, it is hard to choose the right one. To be safe, everyone prefers life over death, trying to convince themselves with the reason of their own survival. If one survives without achieving a just end, they are a coward. Here lies the crucial point. As long as someone chooses death without having reached their goal, their death is free from shame, even if others may call it meaningless or insane. This is the essence of Bushido. If someone prepares for death every morning and evening and expects death at every moment, Bushido is their own path. Some people can rely on their natural talent for spontaneous decisions, while others have to rack their brains hard in bed to reach a final solution. Every man is born with a different measure of wisdom. One discovers wisdom within themselves that they never even dreamed of when they think clearly about their own ego and act based on the 4 vows. Even though everyone likes to believe they can solve the most difficult problems through serious thinking, it leads to values that are based on their own ego, resulting in nothing but evil and useless ideas. No matter how hard one thinks, limited people can rarely turn off their subjective way of looking at things. When someone faces a serious problem, they must first set it aside for a while, recall the basics cited in the 4 vows, and decide free from their ego. This prepares them against serious misjudgments. Recognize the limits of your own wisdom. One tends to try hard to judge every situation with the little wisdom they have, and thus cope with it, which breeds evil, egocentric thoughts against providence and turns into vice in the eyes of outsiders. Such wisdom is dirty, pathetic, and narrow-minded. Not least, it is too dull to allow spontaneous action. If no important idea comes to mind, it is better to ask a wise person for advice. The wise person, who is not personally involved, can judge the case selflessly and openly. Such a judgment is firm and convincing, impressing others, and can be compared to a huge tree nourished by many strong roots. In contrast, a judgment born from limited wisdom is like a lonely tree in the barren teachings of a vast field. A man who is in harmony with his lord, Sagar Kuma, an opponent of thousands, had long given up his life. His heart was in harmony with his lord's. Once, Prince Sakyo, who could not stand the lord, held a secret meeting where it was decided to force Kuma to death by seppuku, causing Lord Matsushige to lose the minister he trusted most. Kuma got wind of this, rented a 3-story tea house on the Takuinu estate, gathered a bunch of ruffians and staged a noisy puppet show. Kuma even operated the puppets himself. The wild drinking party at Prince Sakyo's estate lasted for days and nights. The intention behind this improper behavior was to discredit himself and dishonor his lord so that he could face the planned seppuku with dignity. Be careful with reproaches towards others. Making accusations. It is easy to find the good and evil in another person. Similarly, it is easy to criticize them for their faults. Many people think it is appropriate to openly give advice to others and give up if the advice is not accepted. This benefits no one because others are only exposed to shame and loss of face. Before giving advice to another, one must first determine if the other person is in a suitable state, meaning they have an open mind for instruction. Then become familiar with them so that they trust the advisor. Occasionally, attract the other's attention by addressing their inclinations and other interests. Carefully choose the best time and method. Let the intended instructions sink in casually without directly lecturing. This can be achieved through occasional letters, farewell visits, or discreet conversations about one's own flaws and mistakes. True instruction lies in allowing the admonition to be swallowed naturally, like a thirsty throat absorbs water. The other person experiences a liberation from their faults after being first encouraged by praising their strengths. Teaching is a difficult task. I know from personal experience that errors, which are usually long-lasting, cannot be corrected through usual means. True greatness and compassion are revealed when the followers of a clan come together in brotherhood, correct each other's weaknesses, and strive to serve their lord in harmony. How can someone achieve this ultimate goal if they only expose others to shame? Suppressing a sneeze in the presence of others is improper. When an unexpected sneeze occurs, rub your forehead with your hand from bottom to top, which is usually enough to suppress the sneeze. If that doesn't work, hide the sneeze from others by licking your lips with your tongue and hiding the sneeze behind your sleeve or hand. The same applies to sneezing. Sneezing and coughing often make you look foolish. There are many other things you must pay attention to in order to behave properly. Be an attentive guest. It is advisable to think about and note down what needs to be done the next day. The Lord would surely study the man he wants to visit the next day carefully, select appropriate greetings and conversation topics, and so on. When accompanying your Lord on a visit or going alone for a conversation, you should think carefully in advance about the host to avoid insults during the visit. This is the way to harmony between people and social courtesy. If someone is invited by a high-ranking man or a similar dignitary, they cannot be good company if they feel very tense before the visit. The right way is to be sincerely grateful for the occasion and look forward to the upcoming meeting with great joy. In general, one should not make uninvited visits unless absolutely necessary. It is very important for a guest to prepare for a visit by imagining the planned company beforehand. In a drinking party or similar event, it is most important to consider when to excuse yourself and leave. I do not want to see people bored by leaving too late, but also not too early, which could ruin an enjoyable meeting. Usually, too much restraint is inappropriate. If you are invited to a dinner and the host has offered the meal once or twice, it is better to accept the kindness. By swearing never to backbite others on the warrior's path, one also decides to make their military bravery known to all people on earth and be useful to their lord. This means instructing the lord in better clan management after being promoted to advisor. The duties of the son go hand in hand with loyalty to one's own lord. They are naturally meant to work for the good of others, which means striving to make all other men useful followers of their lord. Be prepared for any situation. Military tactics and strategy are determined by capable and incapable men. The former are not only experienced, but also ready to solve every problem in a commendable way at the decisive moment. They are nourished by their unique study of various standards for a multitude of circumstances. These are men who are prepared for any situation. On the other hand, the others do not think about the possibilities in advance. When they solve a problem, it is nothing but a lucky coincidence. Proper conduct with drinking. One cannot be careful enough with their behavior. As I observed at various festivals, most men bend over nothing more than their drinks. If someone drinks when they should, it is allowed. At any other time, they look shameful and clumsy, and their daily mental habits and even their true character are revealed. Be clear that a festival is a public function. Always being alone makes one lonely. certain elder follower preached extreme frugality in all areas of life. However, an old wisdom says that a too clear stream is avoided by fish. Fish can survive and grow by hiding under water lilies or other underwater plants. Only when a superior overlooks the small flaws of his men can they live in a peaceful spirit. Vitality comes first. When I, Yasabudo, had a poem written on a rectangular card, I spoke about vitality in calligraphy with the following words. Imagine you would write only one word across the entire card, as if you were tearing the card with your brush. Whether your calligraphy is presentable or not depends on your energy. All that is required of a samurai is that he feels full of life energy and not tired or negligent. Effeminate men, as Dr. Matsukuma Mai Nokan is said to have, in medicine, men and women are divided into positive and negative in different ways. Even a man's pulse is different from a woman's. However, in the past 50 years, this difference in pulses has disappeared. With this phenomenal change, I began to treat men's eye diseases like those of women because I could not make a successful prognosis with male patients. Those I treated with men's medicine made it clear that they had lost their male spirit. I kept this fact a secret to myself. So, most men today evidently have a feminine pulse. Only a few men really look masculine, making it easy for true men to surpass others with little effort. Spectators see more than players. Driven by the aversion to injustice. Achieving justice is difficult. Continuously seeking justice based on one's own belief often leads to serious mistakes because the truth lies far beyond the reach of the judiciary and is hard to find unless someone is equipped with the highest wisdom. If someone cannot find the truth themselves, there is still a way to reach it by asking others for advice. Even a man who can never hope to attain the truth can very well analyze someone else's affairs. Just as it is often said by spectators in the game of Go, spectators see more than the game. Although a proverb states, "Always think alone to realize that you are mistaken," a difficult matter can best be handled by asking others for advice. Learning through listening and reading means following the wise thoughts of old men. There is no end to lifelong practice. An acquaintance who is a swordsman expressed his viewpoint in old age as follows. Lifelong practice has its various stages. The untalented will never reach a point where, regardless of the practice they undergo, their skills appear pathetic to both others and themselves. Their abilities are of no use at all. On the next level are the less talented who are not quite useful and are dissatisfied with their poor performance, yet they also recognize the clumsy actions of others. In contrast, the talented ones, whose abilities are usable and who can make every ounce of art their own, are proud of their skills and annoyed by the incomplete abilities of others. Those above the talented deceive with their ignorance. However, other people can still acquire their true abilities. So, a person can normally progress far beyond this stage when practicing any art. Beyond that lies the highest level, where one ascends to the very last sphere of an art. Once there, one realizes in the perpetual awareness of one's own imperfect abilities that there is no end to practicing an art. Thus the master lives their life aware of their imperfection, never satisfied with their skills, not even on their very last day. I do not know how to defeat others. I only know how to conquer myself. Lifelong practice knows no end. Things of great importance should be approached calmly. A rule left by Lord Naochige in a writing on a wall reads, "Things of great importance should be approached calmly. Things of little importance should be approached seriously." Matters of great importance should only occur daily in such small numbers that they can be addressed. This rule seems to advise formulating decisions on serious matters in advance and finally making the decision easily when facing the matter. On the other hand, if someone does not make decisions, their resolve can hardly succeed at the decisive moment. I believe that daily practiced decisiveness is the prerequisite for the rule. Things of great importance should be approached calmly. A man who never makes a mistake cannot be trusted. Once, at a meeting, the possible promotion of a certain follower was considered. The members unanimously wanted to reject the proposed promotion because of the man's past drinking problem. However, there was something to consider. If a man is never considered again after a past mistake, it stifles talented men at the source. A man who has once failed regrets his mistake, acts henceforth discreetly, and is always ready to be useful to his lord. Therefore, such a man should receive an appropriate promotion. I believe in his reliable service precisely because he has failed once. On the other hand, a man who has never made a mistake is, in my eyes, risky. How to fight in a street battle. A samurai was once forced into a fight but did not take revenge on the opposing side, thereby earning the contempt of those who saw it as a disgrace. To settle matters with an enemy, one must simply thrust into the enemy and be killed. This way, one's own death is free from shame. If someone tends only to think about winning a duel, they miss the right moment to act. People avoid retaliation with the excuse that they are outnumbered and only waste valuable time, until they eventually talk about completely giving up revenge. One should confront their enemies, firmly determined to slaughter one after another, no matter how many thousands of enemies there may be. This enables them to fulfill their desire for revenge, and in most cases, they will themselves be the victor. Listening to others and consulting books. Listening to others and consulting books means preparing for the decisive moment that can come at any time. By practicing Bushido, one should be prepared day and night for everything. Be aware of the always uncertain life and think about which action in what form is appropriate in the decisive moment. Chance plays a role in a duel. The way to preserve oneself from fear and pain in a duel is on a different sheet than the mere question of victory or defeat. The former only requires the determination to never flee before death. If someone is defeated, they should immediately retaliate on the spot to match their enemy. This requires neither brains nor technique. A man of great bravery does not think about the end of a fight. He passionately rushes into the jaws of death, where his true self is revealed in his mindset. Do not think yourself established. A man who thinks he is already established is unwise. A man who is satisfied with fixed opinions he gained through considerable effort has already fallen into a trap. Both men should strive much more first to attain a fundamental attitude towards skills and make lifelong efforts towards the ultimate goal without a moment of self-satisfaction with the little they have discovered. They should always consider their achieved results as unsatisfactory and not good enough, and continue to explore the right path to mastery throughout their lives. The truth lies nowhere else but on this path of striving. Thoughts from my father. Here are a few things my father, Yamamoto Jinoemon, said or did. 1. When someone understands one reason, many more will open before their eyes. 2. A man with an affected smile is ordinary and cowardly. 3. Whether you speak at an official occasion or a casual one, always look the listener directly in the eyes. A polite bow at the beginning is enough. Speaking with downcast eyes is dangerous. 4. It is not safe to sink your own hands into wide sleeves when sitting. 5. Whenever I read a book, whether it was a collection of stories in kana or a classic in Chinese script, my father threw it into the fire. He said, "The court should read." Members of the Nakan family should practice military courage with a wooden sword in hand as a sign of relentless practice. 6. A man who does not lead a fighting group and is without a horse is not a samurai. 7. My father got up early at 4 a.m., took a cold bath, shaved his forehead every morning, had breakfast at sunrise, and went to bed at sunset. Changes in values over the past 30 years. Up until 50 or 60 years ago, a samurai took a bath every morning, shaved his forehead, scented his hair with incense, cut his nails, polished them with pumice stone, and smoothed them with sorrel. He was very careful not to neglect his appearance. He cleaned his weapons and kept them polished and free from rust. Today, this special attention to one's own grooming might seem too affected, but it does not stem from any romantic idea. Ready to die in battle every day, young and old samurai were well groomed because otherwise their dead bodies would surely be despised by the enemy on a battlefield, contrary to their wish to be prepared for everything. Even if this custom seems complicated and time-consuming, it precisely describes what is expected of a samurai. There is nothing special else that requires more effort or time. One remains free from shame as long as one is determined to die at any moment or already considers oneself dead and is seriously committed to both their service and the practice of military virtue. In the past 30 years, many changes have occurred. Whenever young samurai meet, they only talk about other people's financial wealth and loss, their household budget, clothing and sex. Without such topics, they feel tense. If someone chooses a good model in calligraphy and works hard to imitate it, their hand will initially be unsure, but soon make pleasing progress. A follower can also orient themselves towards an outstanding warrior. Although exemplary followers who surpass others in everything are very hard to find nowadays, one can choose various men, each excelling in a different virtue, such as manners, bravery, speaking style, good behavior, loyalty, and quick decisiveness. Students of all directions tend to imitate the unfinished traits of their teachers instead of emulating their strengths, leading to no fruitful results. This also applies to a follower who chooses a teacher that has good manners but is disloyal, and then imitates the unfaithful side of their character instead of their good manners. Discover the strong character traits of other people and follow them. This way, anyone, no matter who they are, can become a good example and teacher. Words of encouragement. When visiting a man who is suffering from misfortune to comfort him, the first word of the visitor is of utmost importance because it reveals their true intentions. A samurai who appears to be despondent and worried in any situation is a failure. He is useless if he's not seriously ready to strive for victory by all means. Therefore, a depressed person must be uplifted. Be friendly to visitors. Be friendly to visitors even when you are busy. Sometimes, someone visits an office at the busiest time and discusses their concerns without seeming to sense the hectic atmosphere. In such cases, where officials often react grumpily and angrily to visitors, the samurai code dictates handling the visitors' affairs calmly and thoughtfully. A dismissive reception of visitors is only fitting for the lowly populace. An old veteran once told me that if someone is focused day and night on surpassing successful samurai and killing strong enemies in war, they can keep their fire of courage alive and prove their bravery free from discouragement. Even in times of peace, one should maintain this attitude. Educate your child. There are certain ways a samurai should educate their child. 1. Build their courage without ever threatening or deceiving them. A heart awakened to fear once will never leave the child until the end of their days. It remains with them as their essential flaw. 2. Foolish parents shy away, making their children fearful of thunderstorms, scared of the dark, and telling them horrible stories. By doing so, they commit unforgivable mistakes in child rearing. A child will lag in development if scolded too much. 3. Do not instill bad habits in the child. 4. Pay attention to their language and behavior. A child raised properly can grow into a useful adult with an ordinary character. It is only natural that children of unhappy married parents will gain nothing from them. Even birds and wild animals are shaped by what they see and hear. Pay attention to your words. A man with weak conviction can easily be swayed by others to their side. During a meeting, you might sometimes hear people shout out, especially when someone is fascinated by another man who carelessly speaks about something he hasn't thought through. A third party will surely interpret such a word as agreement. Therefore, you must always be on guard whenever you meet others. When you express your opinion, you should handle the conversation in a way that prevents yourself from being taken over, and be ready to reject ideas that oppose your own. Even in an insignificant matter, a seemingly overlooked detail can be a trap if you are not always vigilant. Beware of questionable friends. It is wise not to become too friends with a man of questionable character, so that you are not taken over and entangled in his twisted thinking. Years of experience are needed to keep oneself free from such mistakes. Do not be a perfect technician. A proverb fits no one better than the samurai of other clans. Expertise is of lifelong benefit to its owner in our clan, but it only ruins the life of the samurai. A man who perfects an art is a technician, not a samurai. Strive to be called a samurai. Remember that skills can only help a man fulfill his duty if he understands that a special talent poses a danger to the existence of a true samurai. Fear no misfortune. A man who is always prepared for death can surely die a peaceful death. Misfortune is not as terrible as we imagine it to be beforehand, so it is foolish to torment oneself with thoughts of disasters yet to come. Never forget that the worst fate of a follower is still dismissal from service or forced suicide through seppuku. Recognize the true nature of good and evil. The setbacks in a person's life cannot be attributed to their good or evil. The rise and fall of a person lie in the nature of things, while their good and evil depend on earthly judgment by humans. People tend to see the highs and lows of others as consequences of virtue and vice. Look in the mirror. It is advisable to get into the habit of looking in the mirror to arrange your own appearance. After I was instructed at the age of 13 to let a forehead lock grow during my captivity, I withdrew to my house for about a year because my relatives told me that as clever as I looked, I would surely stand out unpleasantly sooner or later. Our Lord cannot tolerate clever faces. When people met me after that year, seeing me constantly improving my appearance in solitary seclusion in front of the mirror, they called me sick and weak. So I knew that my qualifications for follower service were now complete. A man with a clever expression. Others do not trust a man with a clever expression if he does not have a strong spirit within himself. His appearance is not a pleasant sight. A respectful, strict, and calm man is best. Despise calculating cowards. Those who work for selfish gain are cowards. The reason is that a calculating person who constantly weighs gain and loss against each other cannot break free from this thought pattern, which is why he views death as a loss and life as a gain. He hates death, which makes him a coward. Educated people hide character traits like cowardice and greed through cleverness and eloquence, a disguise that only leads others to madness. Desperate battles. Desperate battles, or bushido, mean fighting desperately in the throat of death. Lord Naoij himself commented that dozens of men sometimes find it hard to kill a single samurai in this wild state. One cannot expect a man of ordinary, healthy mind to achieve great things. Only when he brings himself into an almost crazy, desperate state, far beyond reason and self-interest, can he accomplish such feats. Likewise, a man who is once hindered by restraint falls far behind others in practicing bushido, because bushido requires no special thoughts of loyalty or childlike piety, but only desperate fighting, in which loyalty and childlike piety can, of course, spontaneously arise. Whoever observes a master of his art and listens to him, and then concludes that he can never match him, is a weakling. Whoever does not feel inferior to the master, that is, to another person, and aligns his heart entirely towards mastery, has already set his feet on the path of perfection. Confucius deserved his name when he directed his heart to learning at the age of 15. Years of study followed before he became a wise man. A Buddhist scripture says that when someone is awakened to Buddhism, the teachings of Buddha already live in their mind. Pay attention to your language. The samurai must be prepared for everything to avoid showing the slightest twitch. If you do not pay attention to your language, you might blabber something like, "I am afraid." In such a case, you might say, "I will surely flee, that is terrible," or "it hurts terribly." Neither in sleep nor in a playful conversation should a samurai allow himself to utter such words. If they are heard by an attentive man, he can easily recognize the thoughts at the core of the heart of such a carefree speaker. Therefore, always be on guard. Be decisive. An old proverb says, "Think sharply and decide within 7 breaths." Lord Naochige was heard to say that in 7 out of 10 cases, things executed hesitantly turn out to be wrong. From the samurai, quick action is expected. In everything he undertakes, a confused mind leads to no clear decision. A man without nagging doubts and with a fresh and high spirit can come to a decision within 7 breaths. Be quick-witted and determined when making a decision. Whatever talent one is gifted with, one cannot perform good service if not recognized by others. No one can hate a man who strives to be useful, who loves his service, works hard, and is always ready to work with his companions. Avoid promotion. Avoid promotion while you are young and serving as a useful samurai. When one is still young, it cannot bring fruitful results. No matter how brilliant a young man may naturally be, his ability is not yet mature enough to convince others. Therefore, it is better to gradually rise in rank around the age of 50. Surpass others by listening to their advice. The best way to surpass others is by sincerely letting them criticize your own affairs and asking them for advice. For most people, only their own opinion counts, so you cannot surpass others. A samurai who writes much better than I showed me once an official document he had written to another to seek his advice. The fact that he asked another man to review and correct the writing shows that he was already ahead of the other. Pure and simple, in no exercise can there be a stage where someone thinks they have achieved everything. Such a feeling of perfection stands against the practice of the way. A man who was dissatisfied with his results all his life, though he practiced wholeheartedly until his last breath, retrospectively achieved his goal to become pure and simple and to cultivate concentration. Pursuing more than one goal is a difficult life task. Pursuing a goal will never lead a person on the path unless it is done in a pure and clear mind. Move heaven and earth. Nothing is impossible in this world. A firm decision can move heaven and earth, they say. Some things seem far beyond a person's power because he cannot direct his heart towards a difficult project due to a lack of strong will. It entirely depends on one's mental attitude, even moving heaven and earth without applying one's own strength. Be humble. There are many who want to teach, and only a few who want to listen. Even fewer people stick to the lessons already given. When a man is already in his 30s, no one will dare to admonish him, so he tends to follow his own path and repeats his misdeeds and foolishness. Therefore, you must surround yourself with reasonable people and listen to their teachings. Listen and fear no mistakes. A follower who does not love his duty fulfillment in follower service is commendable. A follower who is afraid of a big assignment and asks to be released from it is evasive and unmanly. If someone fails a mission despite great effort, the failure resembles an honorable death in a desperate battle. Always be humble like in the first meeting. If all people live in a society in harmony and leave their existence to the way of heaven, they will surely live comfortably and in peace.